If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and the sisters.
Never before in history have so many voices spoken out on behalf of moving humanity towards survivability, really, livability. And the problem is we have the environmentalists working over here, we have the human rights people over here, we have the spiritual activists here, we have the health activists working over here. And very often these issues overlap, but they're not really working together. So what we have is this kind of horizontal kind of approach to change, where we have all these things happening, but we hardly ever have a vertical point where all of the activists come together because they realize that they need to actually be working together at the same time about the same issue. Now, I can remember that there were a few times when this happened, and it was very powerful. The problem is that these moments are few and far between. But how many people, just as a thing to refer to, how many people remember February 15th, 2003? How many people were out on the street? Okay, for those people who may not know about that or remember, there were 12 million people around the world, and I believe 800 or more cities, who came out to protest the impending war on Iraq by the United States. And there were records that were set in places like Rome and London, you know, with 1 million or 2 million people in the public squares. Even in Manhattan, Bloomberg tried to kind of squeeze everybody near the UN, but there were so many people. It was like over 500,000 people in Manhattan that went out up to the Upper East Side and over to Fifth Avenue. It was an amazing display of people coming together. The problem is that it was in reaction to an impending disaster, and it was not a sustained kind of process. So what we're developing now is a way to actually connect with 3 levels of organizing that are taking place on the planet now. So there are 3. The primary level is with organizations that each have vast constituencies. You know, I'm talking about Move On has 8 million members. Amnesty has a couple of million, Amnesty International, Greenpeace, Avaz, the International Trade Union Confederation, which has members of all the unions in the world. I think the total membership is 138 million people. Then there are these networks like Idealist, which has something like 80 or 90,000 organizations. Wiser Earth, which unfortunately is folding up shop, but they had over 110,000 organizations in their network. So one of the wonderful things is, over the last 15 years, We the World has actually established some connections and working relationships with these groups. So part of the strategy is to begin to make the connections between these groups so that they begin to share press releases, do joint press conferences, have specific themes that they're working on together. And in terms of themes, we created a platform called 11 Days of Global Unity, 11 Ways to Change the World. If you go to we.net/11days, you'll see what's happening there. And there are handouts which have information about that. But there are basically 11 themes. The themes are unity, interdependence, environment, economic justice, health, children and youth, women, human rights, freedom, disarmament, and peace. And so what's been happening at a sort of a beginning stage is that organizations like Amnesty have begun to get involved with this, and Oxfam became a partner for their food programs and the environment. So anyway, that's sort of the higher level of organizing with these major organizations. Then the next level is the thousands and tens of thousands of smaller organizations, NGOs, nonprofits that are working within many of these themes. Again, We the World has been connecting with them, and many of them have gotten involved with the 11 Days of Global Unity program. And then we have the 50 to 60 million people in the United States alone, and many more around the world, who support these organizations and who in their own ways are working for a better world. One of our advisory board members is named Paul Ray, and he wrote a groundbreaking book called The Cultural Creatives, how, at the time, how 40 million people are changing the world. And what he did was, he did social research with his wife for about 15 years, and they would go around to workplaces and communities around the United States and ask people about their values. And what he found was that at the time, about 40 million people shared values of peace, nonviolence, economic justice, social justice, environmental stewardship and sustainability, holistic health, spirituality, indigenous wisdom, global awareness, what we like to call we consciousness. The problem was that they thought that they were working on their own. So so he would go into a business or a corporation, and he'd interview, let's say, Joe over here, who had these values, and Jill over here, who also had these values. But they never told each other that they shared these values, and they had been working together for 10 years. So at the end of the interview, he introduced them. So the reason he got excited about what we're doing with We the World is because we have the possibility of making these cultural creatives visible to each other so that they can begin to work collectively. So imagine a platform similar to what Move On is doing, but expanded in the sense, in a few different senses. How many people are familiar with what Move On does with their networking? Okay, so it's very powerful what they do. They will send out a well-crafted email with sources of references for their facts and figures, and they'll ask people for like $5 to support a video campaign for a particular political candidate in a certain area of the country. And within a few days, they'll write another email saying, wow, we got the $250,000 that we needed. And in fact, we even got 350,000. So we're going to do 2 videos or whatever it is. So it's a very well-oiled machine and very powerful what they've set up. But imagine this kind of platform that has 50 to 60 million people in it instead of just 8 million. And it's not just about political candidates, but it could be about supporting, you know, a new solar project or a renewable energy media campaign or something like that. So this is what we're developing. Another thing another component of what we're doing is some people wonder how can we get all of these groups working together, because none of them really want to be subsumed under a big broad umbrella. They want to be the one, you know. Move On wants to be the one, and Avaz wants to be the one that everybody comes under, or Greenpeace or Amnesty, or so. What we've developed is something that we call open architecture. It's a way that groups can work together without losing their identity and their autonomy and their donor base and all of that, but they can plug in to a system that allows them to be working together, but it's a system that they're not subsumed under. And that's what the model of 11 Days of Global Unity is. And that's why we never get, we have about 100% acceptance rate when we approach people, because we just offer them the possibility of being promoted to a global network, a global audience. So everybody kind of wants to do that anyway. So, the idea is to expand this, and so the other component to the organizing that we're talking about is what I call a cultural shift. And the cultural shift is possibly as important as the organizing component. We're going to be actually doing a full panel on the cultural shift on Sunday. It's called Moving to Partnership Culture, Sunday at 3:40 p.m. if you want to go to that. But the idea is it's based on Riane Eisler's work. Riane Eisler wrote the book The Chalice and the Blade. And her work goes way back, looking at the domination cultures versus the partnership cultures. And her source of the domination cultures was really about patriarchy, as opposed to, let's say, the goddess cultures and the matriarchy cultures of thousands of years ago. But the domination cultures have kind of continued, and we have today the results of what's happening now, with these prison industrial complex and all of these things being manifestations of what she calls the domination culture. But there is an emerging partnership culture going on, and we see many examples of that. The idea of doing co-ops, like work co-ops, where the workers come together and they, like worker self-directed enterprises. That's an example of an emerging partnership culture, and there are many examples of them. It's just not, it's not on the radar, because the media that we have is more focused on power over, and instead of power with, which is more an example of partnership culture. So all of that is to say that if we just, let's say, address specific issues, like let's say raising minimum wage or something like that, or getting some climate solutions in place.
You have
Thank you.
audio?
Yeah, I had to unplug the audio. I couldn't get the audio going. But you know what? At this point, I think we're just going to go with it because I brought a little amp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm okay. Thank you. So the point is, if we just focus on one issue to make. Oh, look. Did we get?
Is he responding now?
I don't know. And of course, I don't know how to get the image up there. But if we just focus on one issue, then we're not going to resolve or address the underlying reasons why we have this kind of dominator culture to begin with. So part of the idea of bringing these groups together to work on specific areas is that we will be consciously working to make the cultural shift that we're talking about as well. So I'd like to end there and move on to our next speaker. But we'll have a chance to make a discussion about this, but thank you very much. Okay, so our next speaker, and I will introduce you. Our next speaker is Ikeda. Is that the way to say your name?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. And here we go. So, Anna Ikeda is a fellow at the Metta Center for Nonviolence. She helps develop the next stages of Metta's roadmap, a model that displays the inherent connection among the many social actions moving us toward a new world of peace and justice, and a set of tools that enable participants to connect with each other and find needed resources. She graduated from the University of Denver with an MA in International Human Rights and completed her BA at Soka University of America. Please welcome Anna Ikeda. Thank you.
So before I begin, I wanted to give my handout so you can refer to it as I'm speaking. So let's see how I can do this.
Just give a bunch and we'll pass it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Rick, did you want me to stand or?
Yes,
or
of
did you
course,
want me
sure.
to- Okay.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to see if I'm getting a
Well,
deal.
flexible, don't worry, Rick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to first of all begin by saying thank you to Rick for inviting me and Metta Center to be part of this panel, and also for all of you. It's so encouraging to see, a room full of people excited to talk about organizing and mobilizing for change to really unite. And I think it really speaks to the potential of this topic. And I'm really excited to also learn from you. So I hope that the Q&A time will be more of a discussion where we can really learn from each other. And I'm sure you have a lot to contribute to this discussion as well. So Rick wanted me to talk about my background that led me to be doing this work. So as he mentioned, I studied human rights at the University of Denver for my master's. And I found myself having interest in so many different social and international issues. I'm sure many of you can relate to that, almost this divided attention into so many things because there are so many issues going on in this world. So, I was studying child labor, human trafficking. In my Buddhist organization, I was also taking part in nuclear abolition and creating dialogue for that topic. So, I always wondered, is there any thread that can connect all these thoughts together? I almost felt schizophrenic, having so many interests, and, how can I connect all of these issues and the people that I meet in different segments of the, activism, right? But one thing about human rights issues that always fascinated me and intrigued me personally was that it really illustrates possibilities of human beings. So on one end of the spectrum, they can be a victim, right? But on the other extreme side, you can be a perpetrator of human rights violation. But also there are, activists and defenders of human rights who have such powerful voices, and they're human beings too. So, studying human rights issues more than anything really interested me, because it really illustrated the power of human being and, what we can be depending on the context and the situation and what we believe in. So with that, last year I happened to take 2 courses on nonviolence and civil resistance, and one was at the Metta Center when they were pilot testing their certificate program on nonviolent studies, and I was one of the students that was testing out the program. And it really struck me that principles of nonviolence really encompassed and connected everything that I was passionate about. It was the thread that I was looking for. And in the words of our executive director, Stephanie Van Hook, she says, "We do not promote nonviolence because it is the moral choice, or only because it is the most effective way to bring down a dictator in a political battle. We stand by nonviolence because we believe it is a birthright, an untapped potential within human beings to live more harmoniously with one another and in balance with the rest of life. In other words, our efforts in nonviolence emerge from an extremely dignified view of the human being." So that really, spoke to my spiritual background as a Buddhist, and because in my Buddhist teachings, it teaches that the life is the most precious treasure in the universe. So why it's so important to me, because nonviolence really gives me the channel and the framework to truly be who I am and express it in activism, but also lets me take action for social change based on the value. And also the roadmap, that project that Rick just mentioned, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, it's very important to unite and work together with other like-minded partners. I'm sure many of you are representing these different organizations and individuals, and rather than competing against each other, because there's just too much work to do to be competing with each other. So what Rick shared about really having this urgency for uniting with each other really spoke to me, and I really appreciate the purpose of this panel. So roadmap, if you can see in your handout, I have it here too. It was supposed to look like this. Oh, sorry. Can I use that for 1 second?
Oh, yeah,
I'll
sure,
give it to you. The printing company that I worked with didn't do a good job, so it looked like it ran out of the ink, but I didn't want to waste any paper. So this is the roadmap that we are using at the Metta Center today. Oh, it seems like there's more extra copies over there. And let's see. So roadmap is a way of making the movement of movements. And roadmap is a way of making the movement of movements visual and set of tools for activists that they can use to build community, train nonviolent principles, and create and pursue strategic thinking toward the realization of campaign goals. So if you look at the roadmap, well, first of all, I wanted to also talk about where it came from. So as Rick kept on mentioning, there are so many organizations in the world today, and in American society too. And I think there's no need to create more and more organizations or more and more projects, and I think many of them are doing great work. So it's really, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but how can we create and use this overarching framework where all of them can express their full potential and work with each other to recognize, just like the story of the 2 people who had similar values, but they didn't know each other. How can we recognize, in different organizations, overarching values? So if you look at it, there are a few things I want to emphasize in my short presentation. One is that there are kind of 3 different circles in the roadmap, and starting at the core is what we call person power. So it's a peace from within framework, recognizing that in any peace activism, it really starts from within. So person power is really about cultivating our inner strength and working on, say our reaction to anger and other, negative emotions, and also really our actions, and really aligning that with our purpose and the goal of peace and justice in society. And it's a continuing process. So, we're not saying that we have to start from there and then forget about it as we move on. But, it's always the center of our action and our activism. And then right outside of that framework is what we call Constructive Program. So how many of you are familiar with Mahatma Gandhi's work? Great, wonderful. So I'm sure you might remember any image of Gandhi spinning, right, the cotton to create any products. And so the roadmap, if you look at that, it resembles the spinning wheel as well. And why we emphasize Constructive Program, it's because we can't just protest our current existing systems that are failing us. We also have to be able to articulate, so what is it that we are trying to create? What are the alternatives that we are suggesting? So in any work that we do, we emphasize that. And, it can't be just symbolic action. It has to be something tangible that can benefit us. So again, going back to Gandhi's example, he was not just spinning, to just for the sake of it. It was actually producing, the materials that they can use for clothing and other other products. So it was actually a way to resist British, imports from the British Empire because they were able to produce what they needed. So it had this, resistant aspect, but also practical aspect as well. And the most outer circle is what we call satyagraha, or nonviolent resistance. So it's really, again, challenging the existing systems that are not working. But we believe that this resistance and constructive program always have to go hand in hand, because we can't just do one without the other. So what I want to really emphasize today is this topmost wedge, which is new story creation. But before I do that, I just want to get a sense of who is in the room. So how many of you can maybe identify more with this environment wedge, where it talks about urban planning, local farming? Great, wonderful. What about climate protection? Okay, wow. Vibrant and need-based economies, so economic justice, great. Democracy and social justice, and nonviolent resistance or peace systems, great. And new story creation. Wonderful. So you can see many of you raised hand probably many times, or maybe every time I said something. So you can see that you can identify yourself in many places. And I think that's really the goal of this roadmap, is that you feel like I belong here. And there are so many people who belong, together with me. So the new story creation, the topmost wedge, I really believe that, we all can participate in this no matter what we are working on, no matter what issue. Because this can really be a unifying factor, in fact, of all the movements. And I think it's actually so timely. I was just reading this Yes magazine that came in my mail yesterday, and it talks about story power. And again, it's talking about we really need to have different narrative that can really articulate our new system. The vision that we are striving for. And so because refusing the current paradigm of separation, materialism, and violence, we have to replace that with our new story. So at Metta Center, and if you can see that in your handout too, we have 4 talking points. One is that we are body, mind, and spirit. And 2, as spirit, we are deeply interconnected. So if I injure you or any other living being, I injure myself. And 3, we can never be fulfilled by the consumption of external things, but by deep relationships of service to the sacred life within and around us. And lastly, 4, we have inner capacities, largely untapped, that liberate us from dependence on consumption and competition. They include our human capacity for nonviolence. So, I really want to encourage all of you to adapt, these talking points whenever you think about your story in your movement, in your activities. So let's say if you're working on restorative justice, your story may convey something like, we do not get security from locking people away. We become secure by helping others to become secure. So, because without being able to articulate that story, we're not able to challenge the current system. So that's really what I wanted to share with the roadmap. And if you have any questions, maybe we can talk about that in the Q&A section. But my goal here is really to build partnerships with all of you and be able to really take the roadmap to the next level. Actually, I just started with Metta Center last month, so I'm on a very sharp learning curve as well. So I really want to thank you for your patience, and I look forward to the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anna. And what you were saying about the new story, that is almost, it dovetails exactly with the idea of a new culture, meaning like the partnership culture that Rian talks about. So it works together very well. So now I'd like to bring up Sayid Abdullaev. And Sayid is a youth representative to, I wonder if this is our other panelist. It is. It's our other panelist. Hey, we're in the middle of the panel. Yeah, so we're in the middle of the panel. Do you want to Skype in? Because we could do that. Yeah. No, just call in, and we're going to be talking about with someone else on the panel, and then when you're connected, we will put you on. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, bye. That's him. So, and I'm sorry, it's going to kind of be an interruption to what do you call it? To when he Skypes in, but so anyway, I was in the middle of introducing. So Sayid Abdullaev is a youth representative to the UN International Day of Peace Committee and for the United Religions Initiative at the UN. Growing up in a former Soviet Union country of Kyrgyzstan and belonging to a minority ethnic group, Sayid has personally experienced and observed the grotesque consequences of poverty, discrimination, racism, oppression, and lack of opportunities. However, such challenges imbued him with a passion for peace and motivated him to inspire young people. At the age of 10, Sayid founded Youth for Peace Initiative, which increases participation of young people in the peace-building process through empowerment programs such as peace camps, leadership trainings, diversity development, and social entrepreneurship. Youth for Peace successfully coordinated over 70 social projects and 300 local international programs impacting 20,000 young people. And I could go on and on. This guy has done so much for young people. Please welcome Sayid Abdullaev.
Thank you so much. I'm so profoundly grateful to be here with you guys to share this space. So Rick asked me to just share my story, share my background, and how, what was my passion to do what I'm doing right now. So I come from Kyrgyzstan / Philadelphia. And so my story started 11 years ago when I was 10 years old. I grew up in Kyrgyzstan, and my grandparents, they came from China. They were refugees. They were survivors of the genocide, so they came to the Soviet Union to kind of start a new life. But due to the Soviet Union, they were not allowed to practice their language. They were not allowed to practice their traditions, culture, so they had to give it up. Also, they couldn't go to school. They couldn't practice their own passions. The same happened to my parents. So growing up in that environment, I kind of realized that, wow, I'm so lucky, I'm so grateful. I'm able to go to school, I'm able to read, I'm able to interact with young people. And then I realized, what can I do with such privilege? How can I harness that? Also, what I've been noticing that around me, adults would fight. Kyrgyzstan went through a lot of ethnic conflicts, And it was the collapse of the Soviet Union, so the country was going through the governmental upheaval. And as young people, we didn't have space where we could go and share our concerns, share our dreams, develop our projects. So I decided to start it in my backyard. So I would invite kids from my neighborhood to come to my backyard and organize a concert or organize a discussion and just get to know each other better. And what I've noticed that we as children, as kids, could get along. We were from different backgrounds. We were from ethnic backgrounds, different economic backgrounds, but we all could sit together and have a conversation. And I realized, how can we become an example for adults? How can we introduce that model and share that success stories with adults, with government? Because we kind of got tired because we didn't have libraries, we didn't have access to like extracurricular programs. And then we created the organization Youth for Peace, a safe place where young people can come together and have an opportunity to talk, to share their vision, to develop their vision, to talk about their dreams, and learn from each other. We didn't know how to write grants, we didn't know how to write projects, we just had the passion to do that. And since inception of this organization, by now we're located in more than 20 different countries. Because when we started sharing our message globally online, other young people across the world started contacting us and say, can we learn more about it? Can you come to our country and tell us how you did this? Can you share your programs with us? And then by the age of 20, I've traveled to more than 30 countries around the world. And when I've realized that we all have the same story. Young people across the world, we all want to live in the world where streets are safe, where we have access to education, where we have access to food, where we have access to freedom and safety. And then so far we've raised over $10 million for different services and scholarships. We've built several libraries across the world, several recreational centers. And what I realized that we all kind of bound by the circle of humanity. And young people, we're not only the future, but we're the present. And we have to act today. So we don't have to wait until we graduate from college. We don't have to act until we get a degree or get a job. But we realize that we have a power to do it now. And we know that we can't change all the problems, but we can do our part. And that's what kind of gives me hope. That's what moves me forward. And also what I realized traveling around the world is that the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Because it's not often when governments or corporations or even organizations do something, but it's about ordinary young people coming together, people who are not defined by their circumstances, but defined by their possibilities, and ready to share that story with other people. So recently I've been working with the United Nations. I was given a speech at NYU where I was sharing the story and success story of young people, and then representative came up to me and asked me to share that story at the United Nations and gave us a platform and a voice to share the work that we do with young people on the global level and kind of lobby global voices for the Millennium Development Goals in the area for the United Nations. And so right now I'm also a youth representative for the International Day of Peace, which is September 21st. And International Day of Peace is an opportunity for young people, for all people, not only young people, from all over country, from all over the world, come together and organize events. So you can do anything. So, because each of us defines peace differently. For somebody, peace can be, internal things. For others, peace is absence of conflict. So the way you define your own peace, you can come together in your own community, in your own family, and organize an event. You can post your, if you're here in New York, you're more than welcome to attend the UN session. We can talk about it after the panel. I would be more than happy to invite you. And you can post it on Facebook. We have a really great website. We have a really great social media platform. You can share your story, right. Or you can find also.
It's showing. It looks like
you can through that platform. You can also find people in your community who may be doing that kind of work, and you would like to get connected, right. Or maybe mentor each other and organize a joint project. But one thing that we do on the global level, together with UN Secretary General, UN peacekeepers, you can do at noon. You can do a peace prayer, which is a minute of silence. And we believe in that energy that we're all created at the same time, at the same moment, for peace. We can just whatever you do, if you don't have time to organize a project, if you don't have time to, organize a rally or a peace camp, on September 21st at noon, you can just do like a minute of silence for peace, for social justice, and that's going to be your contribution for your own little contribution. The other lesson that I've learned is that as a peacemaker, that in order for me to be the change that I want to see in this world, in order for me to continue my peace work, I don't necessarily have to be loud. I don't necessarily have to be smart. But I've realized that it's important to be committed, because commitment is what takes our vision and turns it into reality. And whenever people ask me, what would be like your single recommendation for people to start a project, to start a movement? And my recommendation is to be committed, because only through the commitment we were able to do what we're doing now. So I would be really happy to learn about your work and answer any questions that you have, and maybe organize any. If you have young people in your own organization, or you'd like to be involved, to become mentors and to mentor young people across the world, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it as well. So thank you.
Let's do Q&A. Do you have a question?
I was a peace delegate to the UN last year, and I'm a Veterans for Peace. A very powerful tool out there is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Right.
9 of us in the Lehigh Valley filed criminal complaints against the senator and the congressman based on violating both United Nations law and federal law. And I would urge you to all consider that, because it doesn't cost any money. You go to the FBI 3 at a time, you spell out the complaints, then you send a copy to the U.S. Attorney, and what more powerful instrument can you have? It goes back to World War II, the 4 Freedoms, the Atlantic Charter, and if they commit a crime, you should at least document it. If somebody stole your car, that's the least you would do. Here they've stolen much more than that.
Right. Okay, that sounds good. Any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to ask Sayid how his organization raised $10 million.
Yeah, go ahead. That's a good question.
So what we did first, when we do fundraising, we follow the approach called social partnership. And social partnership is when you involve people in all of your community. So it's not only like international grants, it's not only governments, but it's also businesses. It's also about ordinary people. So what we did, we had a phone campaign, and we would send letters with our work to different adults, to different organizations all over the world. We started in Idaho, in Pennsylvania, in Kyrgyzstan, in France. And then we would call them and we'd have a conversation. And then, so $10 million was like over 10 years through services and through building library and other services. So, and then we wrote a lot of grants. We won a lot of grants and foundations. So.
Oh, you did learn
Yeah.
how to write grants?
We did, yeah. We learned how to write grants.
You didn't mention that.
Yeah, we learned how to write grants. We learned how to create strategic plans. And then now what we do, when we try to organize different events, when young people invite us to their communities, we start with a vision plan training to help young people to mobilize their vision through needs assessment. Then we share the knowledge on how to develop projects, design projects, and connect them to different donors, and also involve the local community. One of our friends, for example, what she did with her own organization in Louisiana, instead of trick-or-treating for candies, she mobilized kids to trick-or-treat for coins or for cash to build schools in Ghana, in Africa. And they were able to raise over $2 million in Louisiana through that, through mobilizing kids. And trick-or-treating not for candies, but trick-or-treating for...
In one Halloween?
I think it was like for 2 years, but it was like the entire state. It was a huge movement.
Did you get it?
So,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I'm just going to throw in here very quickly, actually, because you mentioned this in September, and of course there's the UN event, and so I just also want to make sure that you were also aware of this effort that's going on towards building the People's Climate March that will be exactly on that day, which is also an effort to bring together, we talk about bringing together various organizations, but it's working with community-based organizations, environmental organizations, religious organizations, and unions across the United States and actually internationally to build for Climate March. And I think I want to at least leave you the information, because when you're calling for your moment of peace and prayer at noon, I wouldn't want a march to be interfering with that. So I think we need to coordinate a little bit in terms of timing and also in terms of effort.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that.
Will you be in New York that day?
Yes.
I just want to say Grassroots partnership is happening.
Can you
Any other comments? Yes.
I very much appreciate your work and your way of formulating the challenges and also the answers. I'd like to understand how you feel you can, there is, I don't want to be a downer, however, there's a power structure in based upon nations and legal
We've
structures.
been trying for 20 minutes to get it on.
So,
Are
on
you
the one
the-
hand, you can raise money for good works,
So-
right?
I hope so.
There's this other
Just
major
figure it
axis
out now.
of control and action that needs to be displaced perhaps, but I wanted to hear your thoughts.
I'm just wondering if it gets disconnected.
Shell oil and Exxon are not going to just go away for all the good feelings that.
Yeah, just kept going too. Can you hear me?
Right.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry for the technical problems here, folks. But we have a deal on the screen. I mean, yeah, Adil Kassam. So I'm going to introduce you, okay? And then I'm going to face the computer to the audience so you can see them as you're talking.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, can I just say something? So a question was just asked, and it was.
No.
Maybe we can go back to that.
Back
Yeah.
to the end. Like really exactly.
Yeah.
Back to it at the very end. That'd be great.
Yeah, so we'll come back
A
to
question
that.
was asked. It would be awesome if it could be the first one once this is finished.
Perfect, perfect. Good. I'm
Do you wanna
I'm
take
dying
my
to hear it. Okay, so you're there, Adil, right?
Am I?
Yeah, hold on. Yes, yeah, I can hear you. So, Adil Kassam co-created Unify, a platform to support those who are organizing global synchronized movements of good in the world. Unify.org was birthed on December 21st, 2012 to serve the emergence of intentional events as millions of people align their expressions of consciousness in a historic moment of global unity. In 2014, 309 cities participated in Unify's celebration of World Water Day on March 22nd. Adil and Unify are currently working closely with Wave of Action, Occupy, and Idle No More. So, without further ado, here is Adil Kassam. Thank you. I'm glad we finally figured it out.
Hi. Wow, we're living in the future, huh? It's actually working. Wow, wonderful. Would you like me to just like riff about Unify or what?
Yeah, so,
or take questions or what?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're not up to Q&A yet, but we will get there. So,
Okay. Okay.
Basically, we talked about the importance of creating unification and collaboration and coordination and cooperation at unprecedented levels in order to address the issues that we know so well, climate change, poverty, rising inequality, militarism and war, all the complexes I talked about. And you and I have talked about this a bit. So what have you been doing and Unify have been doing regarding this idea of working together in ways that just haven't happened yet? Thank you. And then we'll open it up and we'll have a Q&A.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, I guess we've all been immersed in the internet, right? Like, and watching it grow and experimenting with all sorts of different things. And there's finally some things that have gelled where people really are congregating. And so what we've been experimenting with is something called the social media engine room, this use of prophetic fiction, which I'll explain in just a moment, and viral media campaigns to catalyze global action. And so what we do basically, when I say prophetic fiction, it's kind of like science fiction in that, science fiction is 1,000 years into the future, but it shapes culture, right? Like the shape of our cell phones or the aerodynamics of our cars are sort of shaped by these ideas that visionaries put forth in media that touches us, be it through film or through, even through music videos and things like that. So we thought, can we utilize a similar concept to lay something like, 1,000 years into the future, or 500 years into the future? Could we create something that's a week into the future and invite people to step into that timeline? And so it's like we create videos around, like, what if millions of us could gather on International Day of Peace and create a moment of world peace? Could it look, and we kind of work back from there, showing, in sort of a compelling way that's like, media rich and a possibility. And then we have teams of people that agree to take this video asset with a whole series of graphical posts and propagate them into different communities that exist online, be it meditation communities or spiritual communities or nonprofit organizations that will, be willing to spread them via their list. But the key thing is, because there's so much static, I'm sure you guys are on your Facebook feed, there's, you look on it, it's constantly moving, there's so many things happening at the same time, there's a lot of things competing for our attention, not only online, but even offline, right? We go into our world. So what we do is we synchronize the propagation. So it's like a countdown behind the scenes. We had 1,500 or so organizers, and probably about 100 to 200 organizations we work with, depending on the campaign. And we have a sort of a countdown of the propagation. So we'll count it down for, it coming in 3 days, in 2 days, 1 day, in 2 hours, ready, launch. And what happens is we launch at the same time. It causes, that's how the algorithms in Facebook, govern that something's important. Lots of people are talking about it at the same time. So we have a group of people that have been playing with it, experimenting with the Facebook algorithms and stuff to propagate something in that environment where people are actually in a conversation and planting these seeds of consciousness and then following them up, not only after we plant them, but to generate a conversation. Each person that plants a seed continues a conversation. And inside that seed, we're guiding people to a synchronized action on one day, at one time, and providing people with the tools to galvanize, galvanize groups to participate in that action. So it could be we did a global synchronized meditation flash mob, a global demonstration of inner peace on the International Day of Peace. So that was one of them. Or we've done a global synchronized seed planting and meditation on Earth Day. So things like that. So it's been like experimenting. It's sort of a field that people term culture hacking. So it's sitting right in front of us almost, but it's like, how do we get groups of people to do the same thing at the same time, be that post or be that show up at a meditation flash mob? So we've been experimenting with how people unify fundamentally, and I think we're finally beginning to find some patterns that actually are yielding some success and have been capturing metrics on what's been happening in our, and so I can share some of that with you. I don't know if this is, if I should go deeper into this, or how you prefer me to proceed.
Well, I wanted to just comment a little bit, and then we'll go back to our Q&A, so we get people involved. But I wanted to say that what you've been doing in terms of synchronizing and getting people to do the same thing at the same time is kind of like what I was saying before you got on, this idea of a vertical kind of response. And I know you've been working more in the area of things like meditation and these kinds of things, but I would like to use, I think that we can use the same kinds of approaches to do very specific things that are not just inspiring to people, but also have, let's say, a specific purpose in terms of, let's say, upcoming legislation or some other kinds of things. What do you think about that kind of idea?
Absolutely, the thing we're most interested in. What we've been experimenting with is first using the reason we utilize days like Earth Day or Peace Day or Water Days. It becomes a theme for us to build unifications around. So during Water Day, there was like about 6 or 7 different types of ways that people were participating in Water Day, and there was so much, we were finding that we could shine the light on so many different movements and so many different NGOs and nonprofit organizations that were doing things beautiful for water that nobody really knew about, and or very few people knew about. So we could begin to create a conversation on, these are what some of the different entities are doing, and this is how you can get involved. And we didn't get to really capture metrics along those lines, but Earth Day is a great example of the potential audience that you could have galvanized and that are present and available. On Earth Day, I think the current stats is they said that it's, according to Earth Day, that it's the second largest holiday in the world, second only to Christmas, and that there's over 1 billion people in 196 countries that tune in for Earth Day every year, 22,000 locations. Now, that's taken since 1970, when they had the first Earth Day, and I think in that first year it was really the start of the Green Revolution. Once we had seen the Earth from space, that really was one of the things that the Earth became the unifying principle. Why that's now in something like Earth Day, there are so many different angles, all the way from sustainability to permaculture to biomimicry to green jobs, and there's so many different angles to look at it from. And I guess the fundamental thing that we're beginning to experiment with is, how do we allow the audience that's participating in Earth Day to decide what's most important to them to engage in? Because people don't necessarily want to be told what to do, but they do want to be, if they're there already with their children, for example, if you invited something and they had the choice to choose between 3 or 4 different actions, we see engagement and participation when you're kind of respecting people's free will, but also guiding a few options. We're seeing voting engines are online are really useful. They're almost like really simple polls and surveys, and like a second you can decide which of these top three things are most important to you for Earth Day, and then do you pledge to get involved? And so like that. So I do, Rick, what you're saying really inspires me in that we've been experimenting with things like meditation and yoga, but really, the experiments have proven to be, as far as we're concerned, relatively successful. But now we want to see if we can go from just kind of a passive meditation and flash mob into an action. What could that action be? There's been some, and it's a strange thing, there's certain actions that go really viral. And we've been kind of studying the principles of virality, like why do things go super crazy? So I'd like to maybe share some of that with you as well. I'll give you some examples of what what was experimented with Monsanto on not Monsanto, sorry, on the Stop Monsanto campaigns that were happening. There's all sorts of interesting ideas that they came about with. So it's a bit of unified artivism or activism that we're getting into.
So what, if you want to give one, and then let's move to the questions, because we're kind of running out of time.
Okay, sure. Okay, so an artist named Nako Bear. Whoops. Does anybody know who Nako Bear is? These are pretty fantastic artists. Okay, he came up with this idea. He said this. It's obvious to us that Monsanto is harming the world in so many different ways. he said, why don't we come up with, and if you just set up a petition or something like that, it just shows people's discontent, but it doesn't really have any teeth, right? And it doesn't have spreading power, really, like, kind of, people sign on to it. So he came up with this idea and said, why don't we print Monsanto signs and put them on stop signs all over the world and get people to take photos of them. So that the people who walk, driving by, they see a stop sign that says "Stop Monsanto," and the stop signs in Sweden are going to look different than the stop signs in South Africa or the stop signs in India. But it's a globally held idea, and it's there's sort of it's something visible that has longevity and staying power. Now, does that can actually stop Monsanto? No, but it's going to it would. For those that are sort of tied into that or woven into that understanding, it's something visible that they would be like, yes, that's actually happening. And for those that aren't, that don't even know what Monsanto is, it makes them wake up from their reverie for just a moment in their kind of default world and say, like, well, who's Monsanto and why are we stopping Monsanto? What's happening? And it causes inquiry, right? So it succeeds in creating awareness. A simple little idea like that has spread. Anyway, so
yes, that sounds great. So let's go to that question that came up. Who mentioned it? Okay. Do you want to say your name?
My name's John Reinhardt. My background politically, my closest affiliation is with the Water Resistors League.
If you can speak up.
The Water Resistors League. And my question had to do very much with what you were just addressing.
If you can really speak up. So,
okay.
Can you hear me, Adil?
Oh, it's really faint, but you may have to repeat it to me, Rick, because the microphone on this computer is what's picking up your voice.
I'm going to just
walk over there.
I'm just going to, you can walk over, but I have another thing I can.
Yeah, just walk in.
Or you can just walk over.
Yeah, why don't you just walk over this way? Yeah, that'll be easier than me setting up another thing.
So I really, hello?
Hi.
I really appreciated what you were describing just now in terms of how this global propagation, if you will, can get people to think about things and possibly even learn new things. What I was trying to bring up before, we were having trouble connecting with you, is that our world does have a large number of human beings on it, and those human beings have varying levels of consciousness. But our world also has political structures and economic structures that are very ensconced. They're very grounded. They're very rooted in basically, recent history. And so the question I have is, how does this changing of human consciousness how is it going to overcome the dominance of corporations, the dominance of national governments, the domination of all the mechanisms and means that these forces have in our world to maintain their power?
And thank you. And I think...
Oh, and I just wanted to mention, some years ago, because I'm getting on in years, there was an event in the United States called Hands Across America. It was back in the 1980s, and it was before the internet, or pretty much. And I still have a stack of posters at home. They printed posters of beautiful abstract art of people holding hands. And we didn't solve the problem. Now, I'm not speaking as a cynic. I think that you're speaking on behalf of technology and activism that might have new tools.
Right. So Adil, what I would recommend is, this is a fundamental question, and maybe we can all share our thoughts about it, and anyone else, and then we'll probably have to wrap up.
Sounds good.
Did you have something immediately you'd like to say, and then I have some things, and maybe each of us?
Yes, what a powerful fundamental question that you've brought up. Like, wow. Okay, let's get beyond the cliche of the power to the people, but let's consider something here. Let's say there's 1.8 billion people on the internet, and for most people, I mean, we have generally a decent heart. You look at the memes that go super viral, they're things that are uplifting, they're things that are kind, that are funny, you know. I do agree with you. I think that it's like it's going to take a serious movement and a consistent shift of things over the course of time. It's not going to be a flash in the pan that changes things. But consider this. In 1985, do you guys remember We Are the World? Do you remember Michael Jackson and all the artists? By show of hands, who remembers that? We Are the World. Okay. That, you know, We Are the World, it was the first time that all these, these artists put aside their differences, white, black, from different musical genres, and decided to do a piece about something altruistic. In this instance, it was for Africa, for what was happening in Ethiopia. That really, I think it really touched people at that time that there was that kind of inequity. That We Are the World led to the largest global synchronization on the planet, and actually galvanized a huge amount of action and a huge amount of money. And there were some major challenges with it. But We Are the World led to Live Aid. And Live Aid, this is before the internet in 1985, there was, they say that the viewing audience, the measured viewing audience was 1.9 billion people. Can you imagine that? 1.9 billion people attuned to the same thing. And it raised an insane amount of money, actually. Now, I think it was something like, and it's on Wikipedia. You'll want to look it up. I don't want to butcher it, but it was a lot more than they anticipated. Now, the fundamental question was, how was that money used to actually fix the situation? There was no accountability there. There was no transparency. Maybe we didn't have the means to, like the internet, to constantly create video series to show how that money was being deployed. But it did succeed in galvanizing a huge amount of awareness and a lot of action and money. Now that in the hands, it's now 2014. You know, with the tools that we have today, what if we created a We Are the World Live Aid of our generation? What would happen then? And what would be the topics? Do we need to limit ourselves to one symptom in the world? This rise in consciousness allows to get us to the deeper roots of the issue, and all of us that are participating on this experiment called life on planet Earth, right? So that rise in consciousness affects many things, and we do have the tools today to synchronize our actions, our money, our effort, our thought, our genius around solving some of the major problems today. And of course it's going to happen together. Not one, there's going to be one or two people that figure it all out. But I like to open it up. I just want to plant the seed of the possibility of something like a We Are the World to a Live Aid in the internet generation. What could that cause? I'll just open it up.
Yes, you got it.
I got it.
Okay.
We're losing.
We got it.
We got it.
Oh, it's back? Okay, great. So,
That question was really directed about Metta at the beginning, and I feel like it's important not to lose that thread.
Ah, good. So, would you like to respond?
Yeah, and I think I agree with you that this is such a fundamental question.
Can you come closer?
Oh, sorry, I forgot that we
These wires too much.
All right.
That's a problem.
So much to building a network, right? Working with
Right.
people not here. It's wonderful. So again, thank you so much for the question. And when you spoke about that, one thing that came to my mind was actually Gandhi's work again. Because I think at his time, many people believed that that's impossible to, remove British Empire from their lives, from their country. And I think some of them also felt so desperate that they were ready to take arms. And his insistence was that no, we're going to do this without using violence. And one of the things he emphasized, he said something to the extent of, British are not here on their own; they're here without cooperation. So when I think of our society today, of course there are so many systems out here, but what are we doing to cooperate to keep them? And how can we stop the cooperation? And also I think Gandhi was so clever in finding those leveraging points where, he was the stronger, compared to the British, and he was able to really use that to fight against them. But, he didn't see them as an enemy. He saw them as partners to, really better the situation. So, talking about consciousness versus system, I think we can't forget that the systems and mechanisms that we have in society, it's basically, it's a two-way street, right? It informs our consciousness, but I think our consciousness also informs the systems. Because basically the systems that we have in society today, we created them as human beings. So I really feel that the solution is still here, and that might sound a little naive and flowery, but I really think that's the most fundamental solution. I can't see any other solution to that. So, I think that's why at the Metta Center, we really emphasize new story creation, because you're right, the current system, the current paradigm talks about, you have to have these material things to become happy, that you need to buy this, or, that we're separate, so it's okay to use violence to harm you because it's not going to do anything to me, so all these, I guess, misinformation is now perceived as true, and we buy into that sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, and I really think that we as conscious citizens, we really have to be able to articulate the new stories and really feel that that's not true. There is a different story to that. We don't have to have so many things in our lives to become happy. We don't have to support these corporations. We can have alternative way of life, and I think it's really up to us. So I really want to emphasize that part of, our story and our personal power, and maybe in the audience we can, really create, what's our story that we can share together. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Rick.
Okay. And Sayid, would you like to respond to it?
Yes, absolutely. I'll just speak up.
No,
I have a loud voice,
no?
no?
We can see you.
Hi. So it was a beautiful conclusion, but just to add from my personal example, 2 years ago, a very good friend of mine, a global youth peacemaker from Palestine, he was covering the protest in Hebron. Then he was arrested by the Israeli police. So he posted one single picture on Facebook of his arrest. And then in like 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, like hours later, we were able to galvanize this international network of young peacemakers on change.org. It's a global platform for a petition. We contacted CNN, all the embassies, the UN. So, and in a day he was released. And that's when we realized that, wow, it took him just like 1 second to post this picture of his arrest. And then we were able to galvanize the community from all over the world. We were sending petitions from Kyrgyzstan, South Africa, Palestine, Idaho, Philadelphia, and the next day he was released because of that huge network and the huge platform. So that's kind of a personal example how we were able to leverage that network. Thank you.
Amazing.
Yes. So
I also have one tiny little comment.
Yes, good. And then I'm going to give my response. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, Rick. Or do you want to go first?
Well, is yours on the same subject or different?
It is on the same subject.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. And then I'll give my response, and then we'll do some more questions.
Okay. I wanted to say that there's actually seeds of consciousness awakening in the most dense systems that exist today. And it's important that we support those. You can say like fissures in the dam of our collective ignorance, right? You're just going to tap on those little fissures, the whole dam is going to give. But in things like corporate social responsibility, things like sacred commerce, or even in economics, as you're mentioning, things like the gross national happiness indicator. There's if we look carefully, there's examples of these tiny little, these tiny little vehicles of consciousness inside these, very antiquated bureaucratic systems that are obviously, they're just not very well thought through. And so if we just, it's one thing to fight the power. It's another thing to sort of transform the existing systems with the beauty of the human heart from the inside out. And that's all I really wanted to say. Rick, keep going.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I wanted to respond to a couple of things. You mentioned about Live Aid and We Are the World. And of course, it's great for We the World to have a theme song.
It was so sweet to do that for you.
Yeah, they just predicted that we would have that organization. So anyway, what I was going to say is there are two things. There's leverage points, which we've all been talking about, like these single actions that gain momentum. But I think we need follow through, and this, your description of Live Aid, and we've also seen Live Earth and Farm Aid, you know, these huge concerts where millions of people have their attention, you know, focused because of celebrities for like a week or two or something, but there isn't any follow through. And you were talking about transparency, what happens with the funds and that are raised, but what happens with the momentum? What happens with the energy? Not very much. And so this is why what we're talking about is something that is an ongoing kind of a rolling campaign through many different leverage points with the different themes that we're talking about. But it's something that also has within it this idea of creating a new story. You know, we call it we consciousness, and it's, you know, this is one of the aspects that Desmond Tutu said in his speech and his video for us, that he said, I invite you to join a movement without which all the social movements cannot be successful. And the crucial movement we're talking about is the shift from I to we. And so that's something that can be the glue that allows all of these different social movements to actually work together, even though they're not used to working together. Just this concept of the common good. We're going beyond yourself and your needs to considering that of your community and the world. So we have a few more minutes for some questions. Yeah, oh, you want to come up?
Well, can you hear from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Speak in front.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, okay.
Right here.
I didn't want to put my back to you. All right.
Oh, wait. Just like this. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm seeking guidance on a website that I was about to put on, and it had to do with campaign reform. Just quickly, it had 3 parts. A map of the United States, where you hit your state, you get your 2 senators' phone numbers and a fax, and the demands, and I'll just give you a few of them. Money out of politics, end of electoral college, et cetera, et cetera. And part 2 is a circle, the great democracies of a world where we were the light. We now can learn from them. I'll give you a quick example. England, no advertising, equal time in municipal broadcasting, a couple months of campaigning, not years. You spend over 5,000, you're knocked out of the race. And Japan, 12 days of campaigning. Belgium, Denmark, we have so much to learn from them. We were the light, we're no longer. And the other part was a short history of the United States, where Monroe, and during his time, it was impolite to campaign. Madison said, I'll not take one step for pretension of the presidency. Truman passed the hat from train stop to train stop, 212, 5.3 billion. Obama won 2 billion, and Romney 1.3. So I was about to put this on and spend money, and hearing you, I really need your guidance. How to get this message out. I think it's an education which I learned, and I just want to give it to Americans. So I'd love to meet with you or speak to you, or I seek your guidance how getting this message out the best way.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And let's have a few more questions, and then we'll do sort of final wrap up with each of the panelists. Any other questions? Okay, you and then you. We'll stack and then you.
All right.
And see if you can.
I have a very loud voice. Not really a question, just a comment. I think one of the most compelling things that was said today was said by Sayid about how he invited people to his backyard. people together physically, face to face. And I think what we need to do is move from virtual communities to actual communities. The internet is very powerful, and everything that's been said today is very interesting, but until we start meeting together physically in person with the view of capturing power away from this neoliberal tyranny that we live under, and I'm glad the gentleman in the back talked about 4 freedoms. I'm from a family of FDR Democrats. Freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. All of these freedoms have been destroyed by the neoliberal tyranny. So I'm glad you did your backyard thing, and I think all of us need to think about how we as Americans can meet together on a weekly basis with the view of recapturing power.
Yes,
Thank you.
I agree with what you said. I was at the first Earth Day. I mean, I was a kid, but I was at the first Earth Day, and I remember well, I actually didn't know how big it was at the time. I only read afterwards as a student of history that there were 20 million people worldwide involved in that. And, you know, I was at Hands Across America, Hands Across the Sand, all this stuff on the internet. And I have to say, I just finished a class at Harvard called Leadership Organizing in Action with Marshall Gans, who was with the Mississippi Freedom Riders, and then he was with the Farm Workers Movement, and then he worked on electoral politics with Nancy Pelosi's campaigns, and he culminated with Obama's campaign for hope and change. And he teaches personal narrative, right? Exactly what you're talking about, the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now, which is what really draws people in, because people are motivated by emotion, not logic. So you can give them a whole bunch of facts and statistics, and that's not going to get to them. You have to tell them why they ought to care, why my values, illustrated in my story of self, resonate with your values. And then, you know, through one-on-ones, like you were talking about, they did a lot of house parties on the Obama campaign, where people met in their living rooms. They got people, but you know, they were all fooled, because he's a corporate tool, just like everyone else. And quite frankly, I think that in studying, you know, Gandhi, and in studying Mandela and Martin Luther King, it was all like you were saying, a partnership, or somebody was saying, you were saying a partnership. The problem is, they will only let us go. The corporate oligarchy is only going to let us go so far. You notice in those countries, we don't have economic equality in India, we don't have it in South Africa, and we certainly don't have it in this country. So, and using the internet, which we're all talking about how you can galvanize somebody by something spreading virally, that is under attack right now, because the corporatocracy wants to take away a free and open internet and make it a pay-to-play. So if we all don't drop everything that we're doing, I know you're talking about, you know, getting us all together. We need to get together to save the internet right now, because we have 4 months to make public comment to the FCC. Otherwise, they're going to have a super highway for all the corporations that can afford to pay, and a slow lane for everybody else, and there goes our major vehicle for organizing. So I really feel that, you know, this net neutrality, it's a very wonkish term, a lot of people don't know what it means, but it's really crucial, and we have to drop everything to save it. So comment to the FCC, organize, do demonstrations, and I agree, just in a final comment, like what Chris Hedges says, we can't depend on the universities, we can't depend on the press, we can't depend on the clergy, we can't depend on any of these liberal institutions, they've all failed us. It really is going to come down to nonviolent civil disobedience, folks. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one more, and then we're going to do a quick wrap-up.
Okay, first of all, just a comment. One of the things that I'm involved in is that I volunteer with WBAI Radio, 99.5 FM. I'm not sure you're all familiar with it, but, you know, we are working very much to revitalize the station, and one of the things we're focusing on is being more of a place for communities to come together, community groups to share what they're doing, and for movements to all come together. So I just want to put that out there, that I hope everybody will support it and keep in mind that that's a very valuable vehicle we have for getting the word out about many different things. And I had a question for Sayid. What was it like in the very beginning, organizing children? Because it seems in the U.S. it's sort of a hard thing to do. Like, kids are just so wrapped up in their own little world of media. Like, I have a teenage son who thinks the only things that are relevant are sneakers and hip-hop. So, like, how did you approach that in the beginning? Was it easy?
Thank you. And Sayid, if you can answer, and this will be your final response, please give contact information to people, and we'll just go through the panel for the final, because we're at the very
Yes,
end.
thank you so much. For me, it was definitely, it wasn't challenging because it was really fun to bring people together into my backyard, to organize a concert, to talk about it. And actually here in the United States, there are a lot of teenagers and young children who are doing the same. There's just no platform for them to share their stories of how they do it. For me, it wasn't that hard because I knew what I wanted to do. I connected my passion of getting to know people better with something that mattered in my community. But we can talk more about it after maybe.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to give your website? Or?
Yes, you could go to the UN.org/International Day of Peace, URI.org about the United Religious Initiative that I represent, and also Youth for Peace. You can find us on Facebook. You can find myself on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm very accessible also online and through social media.
Can you spell your name?
Sayid Abdullaev, Abdullaev, and I can give you my email address later on as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep. Celebrate International Day of Peace and let's save the internet.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Anna, would you like to
Sure.
just say how people can get in touch? That's all we really have time
Absolutely. So please visit the Metta website. It's mettacenter.org, and it's also at the end of the handout that you have.
So it's Metta with 2 T's.
Yes, that's correct. And also, in the next few days, we are publishing our upcoming issue of the e-magazine Emergence issue, which is going to be covering the roadmap, and it's going to look like this. So please look for that. And I have my business cards with me, so I would love to connect with you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Adil, do you want to give your
Sure.
Ways people can get in touch with you?
Sure. Facebook.com/Unify, Unify.org, and my email is adil@unify.org.
Very good. Adil is A-D-I-L. Right. And I'll just finish up. Thank you so much. You can, there was a handout that was at the tables. If you haven't received it, they're here. These are ways that you can plug in with We the World and the We campaign. There's a way that your organization and your action and your movement, if you're involved with the movement, can be posted immediately online as part of the 11 days of global unity, which happens every September. So go to a global audience, and you can subscribe to the newsletter. As 11 Days of Global Unity is something that is an open system which allows everyone to be promoted. Also, I want to thank Andy for helping with Planet Heart. If you go to planetheart.org, you'll see what's going on with that. Thank you to Anna's husband.
Excuse me.
And if you want to find out more and get in touch, go to we.net. And my email is rick@wetheworld.org. That's the email. The website is we.net. So thank you very much.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters. Whoa, listen, that if I had the bell, I'd bring it in the morning, I'd bring it in the evening. will see.